So let's talk about managing the low frequencies or the bass in your mix, be it rock, metal, heavy metal, modern drop tune kind of metal that I'm into, and I'm in drop G for a lot of this stuff that I'm playing at the moment. For my current guitar, my Jackson, I'm using there a lot of. It could be indie, it could be garage, it could be popular music, it could be whatever. Ultimately, the tools and tips are going to be roughly the same, but let me just spend a minute taking the time to show you some of the bits that I do that might help you improve your mixes. They certainly do with mine. And when we're talking about bass, let's first of all start with the bass guitar. Okay, so for me, that's here. My bass guitar is here. And what we're going to do is just listen to that bass guitar now. So. Okay, so you can hear the bass. There's a bit of the low notes, and then there's some of the octave above notes going on, and you can see there's quite a wide range of dynamics on that particular track. You see from the waveform, the WAV file there, that you've got the core audio is kind of, excuse me, undo that. The core audio is round here somewhere. If it was all flat and level, if we clip the hell out of it, be around there, but you've got quite a lot of range there going with these peaks and troughs up and down the waveform, and that's good. It can have the musicality of it, but when we're talking bass, it can occupy a lot of energy and give an inconsistent performance. Just say there's some quiet bits here, for example, we're not hearing them, so what we might naturally do is bring up the level of the track, and that will also bring up the level of those too, so those bits would overpower the mix, and the quieter bits, while sounding pleasing at the time, you're left with this issue that the whole track is just too loud. So what we need to do is if there was a way of compressing the track, we would do that. So there are obviously compressors that we'll use, and I'll always pull up the one that I use. So what I use is this Shadow Hills mastering compressor. I've used this for a long time when I had it with the UAD interface, and I now use it just natively on PC. So I've got this particular one, and I've got it, and I mean, when you see it engage, you'll see how much, we'll see it when we engage it, we'll see how much we're actually compressing it by. Okay, so that's it now engaged. You can see there's about between 5 and 7 dBs of compression going on there. And it's something important to consider when you are doing compression or applying compression to your tracks, whichever it be, guitar, drums, whatever, is making sure that it still sounds the way you want it to. It's all very well crushing it to get the levels right. It's not a maths game. We're wanting this audio to sound better, because this doesn't have to be the only step. So regards to this, so there's a couple of things that I would basically look at. Where's the threshold? When do you want it to kick in? I'll leave that where it is, but for me, because that's the right amount of compression I want, I really want to get this back under control. You can see there's a wide range of dynamics there. For me, it's how quickly do we let it come back in again, and how quickly do we start the compression kicking in. So for this particular compressor, we've got two circuits. We've got an optical and we've got a discrete. And the discrete controls are down here, the opticals are there. So the discrete stuff, opticals are very quick compressors. The discrete one is where we get a bit more control over what's going on. So in regards to this discrete attack, if we were to pull that all the way down to here, that would mean that it would pull in all the time, or very quickly, so that as soon as the noise hits, or as soon as the audio level hits it, it's going to come in and compress straight away. And that's what it's doing. You can see the needle is absolutely pinned. If you go the other way, you can see it's quite a slow attack, so it's taking quite a lot of time for it to pass through it, for it to actually react to the sound source. So I'm going to put that somewhere, it grabs it somewhat of the time, not all the time. I don't want it completely pinned, because I want it to remain musical. So if you go over there, that's a bit too much. I want it somewhere about there, okay? So that's the first thing, is getting your attack right, so it still sounds okay and it's doing some of the work. You want it to still feel musical. It was a human that played it, it's not a MIDI note. You want it to sound like it was you. Right or wrong, you still want it to sound human. Okay, so recover. How quickly does the audio recover? So now the compression's kicking in. If you put it all the way to the left, that would basically be that it's going to recover very slowly or very quickly. You can see there that the needle is taking a bit of time to go back. If we do it the other way, the needle is quite stuck. You can see the needle is barely moving at all. And if you go back to the discrete again on the other side and go to low, you can see the needle's fluctuating a bit more. So that's really quick. So it recovers quickly. Or on the other side, it recovers very slowly. So it'll remain compressed at the high range for longer. So again, somewhere in the middle, I want it moving a bit. I want a bit of movement to the track still. That still feels a bit too quick. And don't let your eyes be the one that drive the decision making. Listen to the audio, see where you think it sounds. Again, for me, it's around about there. Okay, so we've compressed it by quite a fair amount, 5 to 7 dBs. You pick your poison, see where it's at, but we can see there's a lot of variance in the audio file there. So what we want to be able to do is basically get it to a point where it's under more control, so we can apply some further processing. Okay, right. So the next step we want to do is probably limit it. Okay, so limiting, and don't be afraid of limiting on, particularly on bass. It's another way. Compression will clamp it down to a point, and it will reduce anything above a certain level. A limiter will simply anything up that it will just slam it off. It won't allow it to do it at all. There'll be no slowly closing down on it. It'll just, anything at that level will not pass. Okay, so what I'm going to use is this Ozone's vintage limiter. Okay, so I've just picked the preset, the modern tube on there. Just pick anything. You can pick ones particularly for other things, but I want something that's got a warm feel to it. That's got a nice modern approach. You can see you can turn these from modern to analog or whatever there. So just leave it on tube for a minute. I'm going to put it to true peak because I want to get as much again level as this out of I can, but I don't want it artificially clipping. So I'm going to keep true peak on there, so it'll do that. So it won't overshoot accidentally. Okay, so I'm just going to let it play now. So this limiter is now engaged. Okay. Before we do proceed, an important note to make is that we want to gain match it. So with the gain matching off, let me show you what happens. If I pull the limiter down, it'll get louder. Okay, if I now gain match it, that level will now flatten off. Okay, and that's a really important note to make with regards to bass or anything like this, is you want it to sound. You want to hear what difference it's made to the tonality or the timbre of the sound. You want it to sound how you intended it, but have you controlled the audio? You can make it louder simply by raising the fader. So don't let the limiter be the thing. Necessarily in this case, the limiter be the thing that raises the level for you. So we'll gain match it. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull this threshold down until it starts to limit it. And we'll keep you around the controls on the bottom there. So we've done 5 to 7 dBs of compression. We want to get this last bit of control on the bass too. So let's pull it down. If you keep your eye on the waveform there and under here, you'll see when it starts to pull down. And then we've got a gain match. Keep your eye on that control too. That gain matching, as this would naturally be getting louder if I didn't have the gain match on. So let's keep an eye on that. Okay, some limiting is taking place there. You can see it's now cresting the waveform. Let's pull it down a bit more. Get a few more dBs. Okay, you can see there we've just got some peaks and troughs that were left in there, so we're just cresting the waveform, and that's fine. If we were to ungain match it again, it'd be very loud. But what we could simply do is just pull up the fader, couldn't we? Alright, so we won't do that. Not yet. Okay, so what we've done is compression and limiting. Okay, so we've got it at a point now where if we take these off, you can feel that the low notes are throwing themselves in and out at us. We put the compressor on, that feels a bit more balanced, and then we put the limiter on again. So this is really important. We've treated the bass in a way already, just basic steps now, that the bass just feels present and consistent and not coming in and throwing itself in and out at us. So we've got a nice bass level, so if we were to pair it with something like the drums now, you wouldn't have to wait for loud parts or quiet parts. You'd get a feel of what's going on now. So let's just turn these off and put the bass and the kick on now. Okay, so I'm going to turn the bass processing off now, and then put it back in. Okay, compression in. Now the limiter, and then turn it off. Okay, so if we look at the fader here, look at what level we were at. So we could essentially pull this up a bit more if we wanted to, but we've had a bit of makeup gain in our compressor, which we didn't talk about. But you see the discrete gain there, an optical gain. We can always pull up the gain on that because we have compressed it, and we can apply makeup gain. But look at the level here with the processing off. Okay, keep around there, and let me put this processing back on. It's more consistent, it's not going up and down all over the place like it was. See it shooting there? Then we put it back on, we compressed it to level it out, and then we've limited it, it stays pretty much static and thin. So you could pull this level up a little bit now if you wanted to. Okay, right, so that's some basic steps done. So let's listen to that in the context of the mix before we apply next step. So this is the little bit of a track we're hearing now. Okay, so moving on to the next little thing that we've done. Okay, so what I want to do is, again, you've got to decide in your mix, and you've probably seen this on 1,000 YouTube videos. I know I certainly did. I didn't realize how easy it was to do until I started doing it myself. Certainly with things like FabFilter Pro Q, you can sidechain things like this, but there's literally a plugin for this in Neutron, Isotopes Neutron. So on this particular plugin, let me just undo it and show you how it's done. I've done this on another video, but I want to spend just a few more seconds on this one. So if we put unmask, you basically want to unmask the kick drum. Okay, so we're applying it on the track that you want to manipulate. So the bass guitar track, I want the kick drum to be the prominent feature with regards to the super low frequencies in my track. So I'm not going to cut it off and low shelf it or high pass it, should I say, and just remove it all the time. I only want it to be ducked when the kick drum is on. So I've just opened this up, and there's literally a preset for bass and kick. There's another one for sub bass and sub kick that I've used when I've used synths on this particular track. I'll show you that in a second as well if I remember to get to it. So we're just going to pick that one there, the kick and bass. So I've attached it to that track, but it's not going to react to anything yet because you need to tell it where the kick drum is. So it's on our bass guitar, it's the bass we want to duck. So this little control up here, if we go to sidechain and we click on what we want to sidechain it to, and for me that's my superior drummer, which is there. You can see that now appeared here. So if we undo that, that will disappear. If we watch our drum track, that will just appear there. Okay, so that's it. You've literally told it to look for the kick drum in your mix. So the plugin that we pulled up on Neutron is going to be programmed. You can see there's a particular sensitivity, attack, all this kind of stuff with regards to the kick drum and the bass relationship. So if we just press play now, what's happening here is every time the kick drum places, and it's got a pulsing blast beat kind of rhythm thing going on there, where the bass guitar would normally be also playing at the same time, it's pulling it down so that it doesn't sit on top of it all the time. But when there's gaps, it'll reopen up again. So let's look at that again. So if you particularly listen to the kick drum, this particular piece here, the low do-do-do-do-do, watch it pulse as the kick drum would be playing underneath. So that's the kick drum fundamental there. So I don't want it to affect all the mix. I don't want it to affect all the mix, so I'm going to pull it down a bit. I don't want it looking at the 12 kilohertz or whatever, the click of the kick drum. I want it down here, so we're just affecting the low frequencies. So you can see on there, that's 4 or 5 kilohertz. Let's get out of the way of the kick drum. So the main area of the kick drum is around here. Let's have a look at that again. Only the conflict of the bass and the kick that you want to get rid of. So the rest of it, we're happy to leave alone. Remember, the kick drum is quite a fast transient, so you want the bass guitar in as often as you can. So if you're starting to pull it around these 4, 5, 600 hertz right here, it's not necessarily any audible part of the kick drum you're hearing, so you will lose out a fair bit of bass. So we can also affect the amount of blending of that we want. So it's 100%. Pull it back a bit. You can see there the amount that we use vary. If you look on the dB scale there, that's from 0 down to -6, so we're going to take away 6 dB to the bass guitar there. So that's going to be a bit much, so I'm just going to decide where I want that. Let's turn it off. As soon as I did that, I could feel the bass guitar just went full forward again. Make sure you listen to this on a good set of monitors or some headphones, and you'll really feel it come forward. So put it all in again. Pull this dynamic element out, the bass guitar will run full all the time again. So remember, we've already compressed it, we've already limited it, so we just want to add a bit of a sprinkle here, a bit of a finishing touch. So what we've done now, I've left that around about 3 dBs there. So these are just the basic steps. Obviously, you wouldn't just do this in these few minutes that we've been recording now and then move on. You're going to want to listen to your mix in its entirety. There might be different sections of your song that have bass elements on you want to control too. So again, we've added compression, we've added limiting, and now we've used the unmask function to give way to the kick drum when that's playing. Okay, so on our kick drum, my kick drum is this here. So if we listen to that on its own, it's quite a chunky one. Let's go back to the drum. So a lot of low frequency in that kick drum, and if you can see there, that is our unmask that will be responding to that in the background. Just snare also has some low frequency there, so it's only looking at the superior drum as a whole. It's not looking at the kick drum specifically. So you could bounce it to a separate track and get it to look at that only, but ultimately you want the kick drum out of the way when there's any low frequency elements. Really, that's the whole point, isn't it? So I would maybe pull that a bit to the left, because I wouldn't want it getting in the way of the kick of the snare drum. So let me just pull that a bit there. I don't want that taking anything out of the snare drum every time it hits. So let's play that again. Watch the snare drum here. So we're just on the left-hand side of this. That's good. So we're about 170 hertz. So that's certainly heading towards the sub end. So we're not standing on the snares toes too. Again, a very quick transient. Okay, so the final bit I'm doing on this particular mix is not necessarily taking away or squishing or crushing or anything. It's adding an element in that you might not have thought of this. It might be a bit of a Brucey bonus, but I've seen it on a few videos and I've started doing it myself now. And what I'm doing is this. I am pairing, let's go back to this little loop we've got so you're familiar with what it sounds like. This particular loop I've got going on here, what I am doing is adding, I'm adding an instance of Xfer's Serum, and I'm using an 808. You can hear them there. And one using this particular one, so there are a few, so you could use any one you want. You can use a basic 808. This one here, very thunderous. But I'm using this one that's diesel, because I like the kind of attack, and it sounded a bit more authentically musical. Might be quite quiet on, let's pull that up actually, because you've, make sure I reset this. So this is how it sounds. Okay. And the standard one, you may be familiar with hearing that in certain other genres of music. Okay, what you're getting almost there is a compressed and limited sine wave, really, with some sustain with it. And if you were to just hold it down, wouldn't that be an idea to underpin sustained sections of bass guitar? Because the bass guitar as a stringed instrument is the attack is gonna come in and out, and unless you keep playing or keep plucking or whatever, or do other post-processing, the bass guitar will not sound as full as that. Okay, it's just, I don't think it's naturally possible unless you mess about with it. So let's leave the diesel on. So what I've got there, so I won't leave that on what it was, because it will absolutely saturate the mix and clip it to death. But I've got an instance of this, and what I've got going on, if we listen to our bass guitar here, let's pull that up. Okay, so on top of that, I've now got this 808. So this is what you can see on the MIDI. So what I'm doing is hitting certain notes with this 808 too, so that it complements the same notes as the bass guitar. Let me pull that up so you can hear the effect it's happening. So pull it back just to the point you can barely notice it. So let's pull it back up a bit further. So if you're listening on something that's full range now, like headphones, you will feel that like booming, which sounds too much. And if we turn that off, that's just the 808. Okay, so let's pull that down to a level where it's a bit more manageable. So you can just feel it. So if you have the right system, and bear in mind, people listening to your mixes are going to do it on different things, so you might not always hear this. If you listen to it through a phone speaker or a tablet, you're unlikely to feel this for sure. Even some medium range, medium priced budget earphones, you won't hear it. When you get to premium audio, you'll certainly feel this. And it's for those of the listeners that have got that extra equipment, even a decent set of speaker, from your local hardware store, let alone studio monitors and that, you will feel this. If you have a sub or a 2.1 system or a 5.1 cinema system, something like that, you will definitely feel this sort of low end coming out. So those that have it, you can reward them with that. But in general, you can just add it to supplement your existing bass. Okay, so let's put it back in the mix. Let's unmute the bass track. So let's turn that 808 off now. Okay, that's it. And to me, that kind of falls apart now. It doesn't sound as squishy. Okay, let's put it back in. Just to remind you, that's Xfer's Serum, and it was just the 808, and we're using the notes on the key there, you can see. Okay, And what I feel with that is that we've just added an element that you wouldn't necessarily play with a band in the room or anything like that. But this is you making your mix sound as good as it can. So we've added another element there. So also, because what we did with the kick drum and the bass was important to make sure they don't stand on each other's toes, we don't want the 808 doing exactly the same thing. So what I've done again is I've added an instance of this neutron. This was this unmasking, and what I talked about previously was this particular plugin here, which is the sub bass and sub kick. That's the one I'm using, which is a particular lower frequency one, so it'll have a different attack time, release, and all that, sensitivity and all this kind of things. You see those numbers are different from the last one we used, and that again is sidechained to our kick drum because we want it moving out of the way of the kick drum. Yeah. So when we play that sub bass now, our 808, let's see it duck when the kick drum's playing. You can see there. If we max that out, okay, so it's just nudging, and if you can hear that's just the kick drum and or just the drum kit and our 808 there. It's just enough. It's just underpinning that low frequency. It's not really musical, but if you add the bass guitar back in, then it really becomes thunderous. Let's add that bass in. That's the 808 off. Let's put it back in. And it's quite rewarding, and it adds a lot of thickness. You might not have considered this, that, you know, if you're doing rock, metal, whatever, even rock, pop, indie stuff, softer stuff, it's a really good trick to do. A lot of production artists, I'm sure, do it. If they're not, I'll be wondering why, because it really does kick. Okay, and lastly, I suppose, on the mix in general, low frequency, and this depends on what you want to do, because ultimately, you decide how your mix sounds. But what I've got is this saturated, this HG-2MS from Black Box Audio, and I've made my own preset here, and you can see I've added a bump here. Okay, this particular bump, and the frequency it's at, you can see is what was that, 100 and hope I haven't just reset it. I think I have. Let's go back to it. Yeah, that particular. There we go, 177 or something like that. Let's undo that. So that was 170 something hertz, and we've got a particular Q value there. So you've got, you can see it's a hump. It's not going to be 177 dead on. You're going to have an area around it. Okay, so that particular area of my mix is going to get a bit of a nudge. Okay, and I've added that amount of it. So if I just solo that now, let's put the whole mix in. I'll just solo this particular bit that I'm doing. Okay, so that is what I'm adding to this track. Okay. And let's put the mix back in. Now I'm going to take this plugin off. And back in. Feel that kick drum come more forward. Okay. So I chose the frequency I like just by sweeping around the frequencies, and where I added a bit of warmth to it. You can pick the controls and decide how much of each tube you want, or how much of this amount you want, the Q, the amount of gain, all that kind of stuff. But for me, not having that on my master now just feels a bit funny. I'd probably need to do a separate video on that Black Box Audio alone, and their EQs are amazing. Okay, so I think that's enough. That's a couple of tips. That's 4 or 5 tips on how to manage your bass a bit better, or how to, you know, make it sound more the way you want it. And just bear in mind, guys, you know, these are starting points. I'm just showing you quickly on this video. There may be plenty of things you want to do that are allowing you to start here, like presets on anything. Start with them and then move onwards. So let's just recap quickly. So I've used a compressor on the bass just to squish it down a bit, because we can see the dynamic range was pretty high. And that bit might be fine. You know, certain frequencies do come more audible due to the Fletcher-Munson curve. Certain frequencies are more audible to human, but you can see from the waveform there, they just definitely are louder. So we've compressed it to control that performance a bit. We've had a bit of makeup game there, because when you compress it, you're going to quieten it. We've added the limiter, the Ozone Vintage limiter, and you can see there that we've put the threshold at true peak, and it's deciding where the top is, and we pulled it down until we start seeing a bit of clamping down, a bit about 1 to 2 dB, so limiting on top of that compression. I've then unmasked it against our kick drum, against our kick drum, because we want the bass to be present, but not to the point where if the bass is really loud, then you're going to have to raise the kick drum, and the kick drum's loud, you're going to have to raise your bass, and it becomes this stepstone of you're never going to be happy, and then the guitars get drowned out, then your mix saturates, and you lose your headroom. So unmasking it, because the transients are very quick, what you'll find is that the bass will be ever present, and it will just very briefly move out the way for the kick drum. And the same when we've added our 808 here again. So just X-Verse Serum. I'm sure there's other plugins and other synths that can do this, but we use X-Verse Serum here, and we've just used an 808 plugin, an 808 preset, and we've used that to almost mirror the natural bass that we've got. And then again, we've unmasked that against our kick drum. So when the kick drum's played, it too doesn't stand in its way. All right, guys, thanks for checking it out. And next time will be some more guitar-oriented stuff. What I did have is I got a new guitar recently. It was an ESP, a 7-string Les Paul style guitar with Evertune bridge, Fishman Modern Fluence, 27-inch scale neck. I was going to string it, put some new strings on it, get it down to G, drop G, or G standard below, and I found some damage with it, so I have returned it. So unfortunately, more studio-based stuff this time, but hopefully next time there'll be some more guitar content. So thanks for checking it out. Please do subscribe, like, and if you've got any comments or any feedback, let me know. It'd be good to hear any experiences you've got with regards to this approach to low-frequency management. I'm all ears, but hopefully what I've gone over today can help you. So thanks, guys. Check it out later.